Hey, Mike here. I just wanted to let you know that you can listen to Dark Poutine early and ad-free on Amazon Music, included with Prime.
Welcome back to Dark Poutine. I am Mike Brown here in the Dark Poutine studio in Langley, British Columbia.
And this is Matthew. Mike, welcome back from Alberta.
Yes, I had a great time in Alberta. We can't really talk about the project much because it's coming out next year.
How is Morgan?
Morgan is great. And the guy who we went out with, Jason Hewlett, he's pretty fantastic. Interestingly, we had a bit of a realization when we were out filming.
But you're cousins?
No, we're not cousins.
Okay.
But I kept thinking, where do I know this guy from? And he was thinking the same thing. He and I went to film school together. He was in the foundation film program, and I was in the acting program. He directed me in a short film.
You guys are trying to remember how you know each other.
Yeah, 30 years ago.
That's fantastic.
Yeah, it was pretty crazy.
That is crazy.
The name of the movie was Truth Is. And I played a guy who was a kidnapper and people trafficker and all. Yeah.
I would like to see that movie.
Nobody is ever going to see that. Because it's poo. Anyway.
Mike's early work.
Oh, yeah. I don't know about work. I just felt like, oh my God. And the part that Michael Brown will be playing is played by a piece of wood. Anyway.
The views, information, and opinions expressed during the Dark Poutine podcast are solely those of the producer and do not necessarily represent those of Curious Cast, its affiliate, Global News, nor their parent company, Chorus Entertainment.
Dark Poutine is not for the faint of heart or squeamish. Listener discretion is strongly advised. We're not experts on the topics we present, nor are we journalists. We're two ordinary Canadians chatting about crime and the dark side of history. Let's get to it. Put on your toque, grab yourself a double-double and a Nanaimo bar. It's time to scarf down some Dark Poutine.
You are responsible for obtaining and maintaining at your own cost all equipment needed to listen to Dark Poutine. Dark Poutine can be addictive. Side effects may include, but not be limited to, pausing and questioning the system, elevated heart rate, pondering humanity, odd looks from colleagues as you laugh out loud at work, family members not into true crime worrying about you. Positive side effects may include some perspectives and opinions that you disagree with, as well as some wokeness and empathy. If you don't think Dark Poutine is for you, consult your doctor immediately.
In July 1991, the city of Vancouver was rocked by the brutal murder of 29-year-old Mary-Lynn Kimberly Breeden. Friends and family called her Lynn. The charred remains of her body were discovered in a dumpster with bullet wounds to the skull. What followed was a complex investigation that would uncover a web of deceit, greed, and cold-blooded violence. Through witness accounts, advances in forensic evidence, and detailed police work, detectives were able to piece together the chilling details of Breeden's final moments. Their investigation led them to a suspect named Christian Albert Cruz, a male stripper with a history of violence. As the case unfolded, a tragic tale of betrayal and desperation began to emerge, shedding light on the dark motivations that drove one man to commit such a heinous act. You're listening to Dark Poutine episode 320, All That Remains, The Murder of Mary-Lynn Breeden. In the late afternoon of July 6, 1991, while disposing of the trash, two janitors, one named Milton Diaz, made a troubling discovery in a garbage dumpster on the 1500 block of Rand Avenue, directly across from the Fraser Arms Hotel on Marine Drive in South Vancouver. When they approached the dumpster, the pair noted that the sides of it felt unusually warm, even for a summer day. Upon looking inside, to the right-hand side of the dumpster, Diaz saw a charred and blackened figure, shaped like a person. It appeared small, burned so badly that it appeared to be a child at first glance. Diaz dropped the garbage bags he was carrying and ran to call for the police. Later interviewed for an episode of the true crime docuseries Forensic Files called Charred Remains, Diaz, whose first language was Spanish, said of his gruesome discovery, quote, "I know something was burned, but what was it? Was it animal or was it a person? If it was a person, it was too terrible to happen. It was too out of, what I can conceive that someone will do to another human being," end quote. We have linked to the episode in our show notes, but be forewarned, if you have any intent to watch, I can't recall a more gory episode of this show. It is horrendous. And there have been many, many gory episodes of Forensic Files.
Yeah, I wouldn't want to see it. And what he says here really hits me. Talks about it's too terrible to happen, and he can't conceive of someone doing it to another human being.
Yeah.
And no matter how many shows we do, Mike, or how much I know about history, right, I still can't conceive people doing this to each other. Even though we know it happens, I can't conceive it. It's just so weird.
I can conceive it now because I've read so much. I can't conceive doing it personally to anybody. That's the thing.
But people do it.
Police responded and found a shocking crime scene and cordoned off the area to preserve evidence while they delicately extracted the body from the dumpster. The body was in a terrible state, unidentifiable by sight, and weighed only 36 pounds or just over 16 kilograms. The investigators knew immediately that identifying the victim through traditional means like fingerprints would be impossible given the severely burned state of the body. During the autopsy, Dr. Gray couldn't find any recognizable skin, but did discover a small patch of what appeared to be reddish blonde hair where the victim's head had pressed against the floor of the dumpster. However, the intense heat had destroyed the hair follicles, rendering DNA testing impossible. X-rays of the skull revealed several pieces of metal and a fractured skull, evidence of gunshot wounds. Bullet fragments removed from the brain came from a .22 caliber weapon but were too badly damaged for ballistic identification. This confirmed for the investigators that they were dealing with a homicide case. The gunshots had caused more severe damage to the brain and fractured many facial bones. Blood found in the facial bones and sinus cavities indicated active circulation when the bullets entered, meaning the victim's heart was still beating at the time the shots were fired. Unfortunately, the intense heat altered the body chemistry, preventing DNA analysis. Fire and elevated temperatures during burning can degrade and damage DNA in biological materials like body tissues and blood. A 2019 medical study titled Effect of Fire on DNA and its Profiling in Homicide Cases found that DNA profiling was possible from samples not directly exposed to heat/fire, but samples in direct contact with fire had degraded DNA. Wildfires, like recent ones in Maui, can reach temperatures of over 2,000 degrees Fahrenheit, that's 1,093 degrees Celsius, hot enough to destroy even tooth enamel, the hardest substance in the human body. While earlier studies suggest DNA is destroyed above 1,850 degrees Fahrenheit, or 1,010 degrees Celsius, a recent study found that most DNA samples could survive such extreme heat. Bone can help preserve DNA to some extent.
I was wondering if more bodies are burned now than before, when there's been a murder and before DNA, as a way to get rid of evidence. I love these macroeconomic things of of murder, right?
Yeah.
Like, hey, like there's less serial killers now because there's more evidence. So people are moving into mass murder, stuff like that.
Yeah.
And I couldn't find any numbers, but I did bump into an interesting article in the American newspaper, the Augusta Chronicle. I guess that maybe be Georgia, maybe. Yeah. I'm not sure. So, and it said, quote, burning is often seen as a way to destroy evidence or dispose of a body, but authorities say that's just a myth. In the past, successfully covering up a crime with fire was feasible, but with today's advances in technology, evidence can always be found. And then there's a quote, it might take us a little longer because you have to sift through the fire damage, but we still overcome it, said Richmond County Sheriff's Lieutenant Calvin Chu. The difficulty is ultimately determined by how quickly the fire is extinguished. Fire, Chu said, is no more damaging to evidence in homicide cases than water or other elements. End quote. Yeah, so I just kind of looking into just this case got me wondering if more and more people after the invention or the not the invention of DNA, but you know what I mean, of techniques,
discovery of DNA technology.
If people started thinking, well, let's do this, right? But I couldn't find it.
Yeah,
but yeah, and I think that's important that note about how quickly it's extinguished, right?
Yeah, that's the thing. If it's allowed to burn for an extended period, that this might be a different story.
Yeah.
And especially because we're talking about technology that was available to the prosecution and investigators in the 1990s.
Yeah.
So, yeah. Examination of the body's lungs showed no sign of smoke inhalation, suggesting the victim was already deceased before the fire. Thank goodness. The state of the internal organs revealed the victim was an adult female. Despite the gruesome condition of the remains, the investigators were determined to identify the victim and bring the perpetrator to justice through meticulous examination of every available shred of evidence. To assist with the identification process, investigators brought in Dr. Larry Cheevers, a forensic odontologist tasked with studying the victim's dental remains. The use of dental records to identify victims of crime and violence has a long history, dating back to ancient times. One of the earliest well-documented cases is from 66 AD, when the Roman Empress Agrippina had her rival, Lollia Paulina, murdered. When Paulina's severed head was brought to Agrippina, she was unable to recognize the distorted features. However, Agrippina could identify Paulina by examining her distinctive teeth, some of which had been partially replaced with gold. This is the first recorded instance of using dental identification to identify a body. Another early example comes from 1193 AD in India, where the Raja of Kanauji, Jai Chand, was murdered by Muhammad's army. Jai Chand was identified by his false teeth, making this the first recorded case of forensic identification in India. In 1758, during the French and Indian Wars, Peter Halkett was killed in battle near Fort Duquesne, and Halkett's son identified his father's skeleton by way of an artificial tooth that had been made for him. Using dental records for identification continued into the American Revolutionary War. In 1776, Dr. Joseph Warren was killed at the Battle of Bunker Hill. Although his face was unrecognizable due to a fatal head wound, he was identified by the small denture that had been made for him by dentist Paul Revere. Yes, that Paul Revere. These early examples from ancient Rome, medieval India, and 18th century America demonstrate how dental records and prosthetics were used to identify victims of violence and war, establishing forensic odontology as an essential tool in criminal investigations.
I had no idea Paul Revere was a dentist.
Me neither. Me neither until I did this amount of research. But he definitely was. It's pretty fascinating.
He's the one that told the Americans that we were coming.
That's right.
Yeah.
The British are coming. Yeah. Oh, that we were coming.
Well, it was us, right?
Yeah, sure.
Like, I was joking with Mike before we started recording. I'm like, the traitor. He's like, no, our American friends will get upset. I'm like, they won't care. They won.
Yeah,
You know?
fair enough. If you win, you're not allowed to get upset.
And at this point in time, I'm starting to think taxation without representation is the case in Canada as well. I don't feel represented. Oh, gosh. Anyway, that's a whole different podcast.
Yeah. Dark Poutine talks about politics. No thanks.
Paul Revere was, I started, when I read that in the script, I started reading, I'm like, he was a fascinating dude, actually.
Yeah.
He really was. He did so much. How do people shove that much into their lives?
I don't know. It's like Benjamin Franklin's the same way. He's like, what? He did what?
Yeah.
He's such an interesting cat.
Meanwhile, I'm like watching reruns of Absolutely Fabulous on TV, right?
Yeah, me, it's Little House on the Prairie. Despite the victim in this case being subjected to an intense inferno that left virtually nothing behind, Dr. Cheevers was surprised to find that the jawbone and teeth were intact beneath the charred surface. In gory detail, in the Forensic Files episode on the case, Cheevers explained that teeth often survive even the most severe fires because they are surrounded by protective barriers like saliva in the mouth. The gases in the stomach expand, pushing the tongue out, while the outer facial muscles become leathery, all of which help preserve the teeth. Through studying the growth patterns of the teeth and skull, Dr. Cheevers estimated the victim's age to be between 24 and 30. More importantly, when examining the x-rays closely, he discovered the victim had an extremely rare dental condition called mesiodens, an extra tooth that never grew into place on top of the two front teeth inside the gum line. The x-rays also showed extensive high-quality dental work. With this newfound evidence, investigators had a better chance of identifying the victim, though they still lacked any leads on potential suspects at that point. Police told Greg Middleton, a reporter covering the case, that they thought solving it would be near impossible given how little they had to go on initially. However, when reviewing recent missing persons reports, one case caught their attention, that of 30-year-old Lynn Breeden, with blonde hair, was last seen the day before the charred remains were discovered. Upon comparing her dental records with those from the remains, the extra mesiodens tooth and matching dental work left Dr. Cheevers convinced beyond doubt that the victim was Lynn Breeden. According to an article by the Vancouver Sun's Neil Hall, Mary-Lynn Kimberly Breeden was born in Portage la Prairie, Manitoba in 1960. Lynn's family moved frequently due to her father's career as a Royal Canadian Air Force pilot. They lived in various places, including Quebec, Germany, Ottawa, and finally Comox. Her brother, John Breeden, described her as a warm and gentle and sensitive person, generous, vivacious, and quick to laugh. Lynn loved to read, enjoyed the sun, and was known for her lively spirit and generosity. Lynn moved to Vancouver in 1979 and attended Langara College for a year, initially considering a teaching career. However, she found waitressing more rewarding and eventually made more money than her sister-in-law, Helen Sawchuk, an accountant. Her roommate, Rob Lamoureux, praised her skills, believing she might have been Vancouver's best waitress at the time. Lamoureux added that she loved her work and family, including her mother, father, and 3 brothers. Lynn was the second eldest. She was a very precious person, said Vivian Becker, a friend who worked at Richards on Richards, who noted she was always looking out for her to come up the stairs at Richards. Lynn Breeden had a vibrant social life, making many friends during her 10 years in the hospitality industry. She touched a lot of people's lives, John, her brother, said. She made one mistake, and it cost her her life, end quote. She was also searching for Mr. Right, hoping to settle down, have children, and possibly switch her career to hotel or restaurant management. Quote, she wanted someone who was intelligent, kind, generous, and successful, sister-in-law Helen Sawchuk said. If this tragedy hadn't happened, she would have had it all, end quote. Lynn loved animals and owned a fluffy Persian cat named Chi-Chi, whom she had trained to fetch money. That's a good idea. I should train my boys to do that. She also had spent 6 months in New Zealand working as a silver service waitress at a top-notch resort, serving the finest clientele. Lynn had also won the Miss Hawaii pageant and had modeled for the BC Lions and Big O Tire for a poster.
Oh, fun.
Big O.
That's cool. Yeah, actually, it's interesting. She did proper waitering service, so it's a real profession. So
totally,
the really high end places do a great job in training people. And I can remember speaking to somebody well over a decade ago who at that time was making like 100,000 British pounds a year as a waiter.
Mm-hmm.
Right, like that's good dosh. You know?
Yeah, I've only ever had service like that one time. I was given the seats of the CEO of the telecom that I used to work for a Canucks game.
Okay.
And they are in level 500, which is like the cream of the crop. You have your own seat, set of seats. You have your own little table, and you have a person there who will wait on you hand and foot.
And you don't even know they're there.
Right. Yeah,
So,
they don't involve themselves unless you want them.
having spent most of my adult life in Europe, and a lot of that time in business trips around the world at very nice restaurants, when I came to Vancouver, Justin and I found the service really shocking.
Yeah.
So when you know the whole, I don't know if American friends, tell us if they do this in America. You start eating and the waiter comes up. How are your first few bites?
It's like my mouth is full.
Justin, Justin started saying interrupted when they say that.
Good.
Do they do that in America as well? How are your first few
pretty
bites?
sure they do.
Shut up.
Anyway, it's a hard job, though. Serving is a hard job. I
did it. I did it through college. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Lynn loved to travel to sunny destinations, visiting Mexico earlier in the year and returning from Palm Springs a week before her death. She also enjoyed Whistler, where she worked at Buffalo Bill's nightclub and had many friends. Brian Walker, a friend from Whistler, recalled, quote, "She loved oysters on the half shell by the dozen. She was always honest, whether or not it was what you wanted to hear," end quote. Lynn's brother John emphasized that Lynn was a respectable girl, not loose, and she was cautious about the men who approached her in bars, always taking taxis home. Quote, "It's unspeakable what happened. She really had a number done on her," end quote. He praised the work of homicide detectives involved in the case and expressed confidence that police would find his sister's killer. Quote, "She was gregarious to the point of being extroverted. She needed to be around people, and her job satisfied that need," John explained. An overflow crowd of 250 people attended her funeral service at St. Mary's South Hill Anglican Church on East 50th. A wake was held at the Mardi Gras nightclub at the Century Plaza Hotel, where Lynn had worked as a waitress for 5.5 years. A friend and colleague, Lisa Hansen, noted, quote, "She was the only waitress who outsold me. There probably wasn't a waitress in the world who sold more Dom Perignon champagne, and when someone tried to buy her a drink, it had to be Dom," end quote.
She sounds really cool.
She does, yeah.
You know, I love vivacious, outgoing, well-traveled women like her, and I don't know if this is true, but I bet she had a lot of gay friends. She seems like the type of gal that a lot of gay guys love to hang out with.
Well, one of the last places she went was Celebrities Nightclub, so
okay,
yeah.
She's my type of gal.
Yeah.
Absolutely. I totally would have hung out with her.
For the 5 years before her death, Lynn Breeden was a cocktail waitress at Vancouver's Number 5 Orange strip club. The Number 5 Orange, also known as the Number 5, is the Vancouver institution and one of the only remaining strip clubs in the city. It is almost guaranteed that your dad has a few stories about some wild nights from back in the day at the Number 5 Orange. I don't know about my dad. Anyway, people who lived here maybe. Over the years, Number 5 Orange has hosted several famous folks among its exotic dancers, including Pamela Lee of Baywatch fame and Courtney Love, lead singer for the band Hole and widow of Nirvana frontman Kurt Cobain. It is located east of the city's famous Gastown neighborhood and a few blocks north of the notorious intersection Main and Hastings. Its website claims it is known for presenting, quote, beautiful dancers 7 days a week in all-nude and exotic entertainment format.
Okay, so I need to know, was Courtney Love a customer, dancing, or performing music?
She was a dancer at the... Yeah, she told us that. Yep. She told us that at a concert that we went to see. We went to see Marilyn Manson and Hole opened for Marilyn Manson. And she, excuse my French, I'm going to curse a bit because I'm quoting her. She said, I fucking love Vancouver, man. I used to dance at the Orange No. 5.
That's fantastic. Wow.
Yep.
Wow.
So, yeah, Courtney Love danced at the No. 5 Orange.
Another person that's shoved so much life into her life.
Absolutely. Yeah. Absolutely. Yeah, she's had a crazy life. If you look for her, you'll see her also in the movie Sid and Nancy. She actually auditioned to be Nancy Spungen, who was Sid Vicious' girlfriend who he stabbed to death. But she was not chosen for that role, but was allowed to stay on for, I guess it was a bit of a featured performer. But I can't remember if she had a line or not, but you can see her in the film. She's
cool. I like Courtney Love.
Yeah, me too. In 2013, the No. 5 Orange made headlines when it hired a notable chef, Stu Irving, to revamp its menu. Before this, the club was known for serving more basic, white trash food like frozen fries and bland burgers. Irving brought a more gourmet approach, introducing handcrafted hot dogs, burgers, and poutine made with a high-quality local ingredients. So if you want a good poutine, go to the No. 5 Orange and look at boobs.
Posh poutine.
Yeah. Investigators began piecing together the timeline of Lynn Breeden's final hours. In the early hours of July 6, Lynn was seen walking on Robson Street after leaving an after-hours club at 1372 Seymour. Lynn Breeden's former boyfriend, Chris Paycook, lived on Robson Street in a nearby apartment building. Paycook was well known to authorities as a local drug trafficker with a criminal history. During questioning, Paycook admitted to being with Lynn for most of the night on the Friday that she went missing. He claimed that she'd stopped by his apartment where they had a few drinks, conversed for a while, and eventually had sex. Afterwards, Paycook stated that they went to Celebrity's nightclub and later the After Hours Club. However, according to Paycook, Lynn began behaving inappropriately by flirting with other men throughout the evening, which angered him. He asserted that after reaching his limit with her conduct, he confronted her saying, quote, "We're leaving? What's up with you?" Paycook claimed he left without Lynn, making that the last time he saw her. Initially, Paycook's account made him a prime suspect in the investigators' eyes. As one officer stated, quote, "He looked really good to begin with." However, after thoroughly vetting his alibi and corroborating the details of his story through other witnesses and evidence, the lead appeared to be a dead end concerning Paycook's direct involvement in Lynn's disappearance and murder. Despite hitting this roadblock, the investigators remained determined to uncover the truth, analyzing every possible angle and following any promising leads in pursuing justice for Lynn. A strange break in the case soon arose. The manager of Lynn Breeden's bank, a local Scotiabank branch, called police regarding a woman who had impersonated Lynn in an attempt to withdraw funds from her account. The manager recounted the incident for forensic files. Quote, "A woman came up to the counter and asked to make a withdrawal. She signed a slip for around $4,000, which was basically the full amount Lynn had in her account, but it wasn't actually Lynn." End quote. Security footage showed the imposter glancing out the window, possibly at an accomplice standing outside, though glare from the sun obscured the identity of whoever was there. When the bank staff questioned her identity, the woman abruptly left. Investigators brought in the fraud squad to analyze the footage, hoping to identify the woman through records of known fraudsters, but this avenue did not yield any answers. Police then launched an extensive effort to find and identify the impersonator, viewing her as a potentially crucial link to Lynn's murder. The local newspaper published the bank's surveillance photo of the woman and asked anyone able to identify her to come forward. Within hours, an anonymous tipster identified the woman as Tanya Forrester. When questioned, Forrester admitted that a man named Chris Cruz had given her Lynn Breeden's wallet and identification, claiming that they'd been given to him by someone who had stolen them. According to court documents, quote, on July 7, 1991, Cruz gave Miss Breeden's driver's license, care card, and a bank book showing a balance of $4,682.67 to a female friend. The friend agreed for a fee of $500 from the proceeds. She would impersonate Ms. Breeden and attempt to withdraw $4,500 from the bank. That attempt was unsuccessful, and the friend ultimately told police about Cruz's instigation of her impersonation and attempted theft. End quote. Forrester and Cruz planned to drain Lynn Breeden's bank account before the theft was reported. Forrester maintained she was unaware at the time that it was a homicide victim's account she was trying to access. The key development provided investigators with critical new leads to pursue in their search for Lynn Breeden's killer. The impersonation attempt suggested a motive of financial gain and cast suspicion on Tanya Forrester and her accomplice, Chris Cruz. More after a quick break.
A $6 billion con.
It didn't take long for it to spread like wildfire.
You got to take a look at this really crazy gold stock. A buddy of mine got in at a dime.
Which destroyed lives and devastated communities.
Every little town across the nation, people have shares in this.
We lost everything.
And to date, no one has been brought to justice.
Somebody knows more than we know.
The $6 billion gold scam. From the BBC World Service and CBC. Search for the $6 billion gold scam wherever you get your podcasts.
Culpable is an investigative true crime series exploring unsolved cases where culpability has yet to be established. Seasons 1 and 2 took a long-form approach into the cases of Christian Andriacchio and Brittany Stykes. The spin-off series, Case Reviews, explores new cases every episode. From Tenderfoot TV, the creators of Up and Vanished, another installment of Case Reviews is available now.
And we're back, Matthew. What are your thoughts?
So doing this episode is strange because a lot of it is kind of in my neighborhood.
Yep, absolutely. Yeah.
I can look out my one window and kind of see Main and Hastings. I can see Robson Street, right? I'm looking out my window right now at the condo building that Richards on Richards used to be.
Right.
Right? Like I'm looking at it right now.
Yep.
And it's so I'm just really getting a sense of her just moving around, being young and free in this city, right?
Yeah.
And she was young. She's having a good time. And she's no different than most of us.
No.
She didn't have the opportunity to grow old and remember these fun times and maybe tell her grandkids about it, right?
Mm-hmm.
And for what? For someone who wanted to get $4,000?
Yeah.
You know?
It's terrible.
Yeah, it's you know, you can just see her living life here. And you know, she was doing nothing wrong.
Nope, just having fun.
Yep.
Chris Cruz was an unusual character. He was a model, actor, and student at the University of British Columbia, where he planned to attend medical school. Cruz led a double life, though. Along with his educational aspirations, he also went by the stage name Tony Devons, which he used as a stripper and professional male escort. Reports indicated he had a healthy appetite for cocaine. When questioned by police, Cruz admitted he was out the night of Lynn Breeden's murder, first at the Love Affair nightclub, and later at the same after-hours club that Lynn Breeden and her boyfriend had attended. A bit of an aside here, we used to call Love Affair Love Your Hair.
Oh, did you go?
I've been at Love Affair, yeah, totally.
It's such a weird name for a club.
Yeah. Cruz claimed he only stayed at the club for 20 minutes before leaving in a taxi to visit his girlfriend. And the next day, he said a friend offered him the contents of Lynn Breeden's purse, telling Cruz that it had been stolen.
Oh, that old chestnut.
Yeah.
Somebody gave me the purse.
It's somebody else's. It's like whenever the police discover cocaine in somebody's pants, they're like, well, these aren't my pants.
Yeah. So somebody who worked hard to steal her purse and just gave him all the contents.
Exactly.
Like, that's really believable.
Yeah, it makes sense. When police asked to search Cruz's gray Oldsmobile, he lied about its location, claiming it was at his grandmother's place in Surrey because it wasn't running well. However, police knew he'd driven it to headquarters and parked it nearby. Unbeknownst to Cruz, he'd been under police surveillance since police learned of his possible involvement in Lynn's murder.
So let me get this straight, Mike.
Yeah.
He drove the car to his interview at police headquarters and then lied that it wasn't running.
That's correct.
Oh my gosh. What an idiot. What a total moron.
Yeah. Well, he probably didn't suspect that they were watching him already.
Yeah, but the gall to to drive the murder car to the police headquarters, park it, and go, oh, it's not working. It's at my grandma's.
Yeah. Police experts reprocessed the bank's surveillance photo and removed the glare, revealing that the individual outside during Tanya Forrester's withdrawal attempt looked very much like Chris Cruz. Police looked hard at Cruz's car. It appeared he'd been living out of the vehicle. Forensics teams found blood on the exterior and even more on the interior, including in the trunk. Inside the car, they discovered bloody clothing, a photo album, a spare tire, a gas can, and a tire iron from the back seat, along with a diamond-studded bloody Playboy bunny pendant similar to the one Lynn Breeden wore. Despite this overwhelming physical evidence, police had no way to confirm the blood belonged to Lynn since her remains were too damaged for DNA testing. This created a serious issue. Without being able to match the blood to Lynn, there was a possibility that Cruz could walk free despite the mountain of circumstantial evidence tying him to the crime scene and to the victim. Solving the case hinged on finding an innovative way to analyze the blood evidence. Forensic dental expert Dr. David Sweet followed the case closely and had radical ideas about helping out. Dr. Sweet, a professor at the University of British Columbia's Faculty of Dentistry, is a renowned forensic odontologist who has been frequently called upon to help identify victims and perpetrators of violent crime. As the director of the Bureau of Legal Dentistry Laboratory at UBC, Sweet has extensive experience in using dental records and other forensic techniques to assist law enforcement and medical examiners. We mentioned him in episode 104, where we covered the Rollo family murders, and more recently in episode 301, our update on the Babes in the Woods case. Dr. Sweet has been called upon more broadly to help identify victims of other violent crimes and mass disasters, drawing on his specialized training in forensic science disciplines. He has aimed to develop a mass disaster response team for Western Canada, underscoring the important role he plays in assisting law enforcement and medical professionals in complex criminal investigations.
So Dr. Sweet's another one of these incredible people that shove so much into their lives, right? So did you know that Her Excellency, the Governor General Michel Jean, invested Dr. Sweet as an officer of the Order of Canada back in 2008? Mm-hmm. That was for his work in forensic science and as a teacher, researcher, and consultant.
This case was probably factored in there, yeah.
And then in 2014, he was recognized by the Canadian Ministry of Defense with the Canadian Forces Medallion of Distinguished Service. Mm-hmm. So he's a bit of a hero, and I think if he's still around, he should call us because I want to give him a knighthood of the Order of the Poutine.
Right? We need to create a...
Yeah, let's create the knighthood of the Order of the Poutine. Like an award. Yeah.
Yeah, we should do that.
The Order of the Poutine knighthood. Absolutely.
Yeah. I don't know about a knighthood, but because I'm not that arrogant to think that I can bestow a knighthood on anybody.
Dude, I'm a queen. I can just bestow the knighthood.
Yes, you are. Well, there you go. So we bestowed by the queen, Matthew.
I almost called you babe right there. There you go, babe.
How you doing there, babe? With traditional DNA testing methods rendered useless by the incinerated state of Lynn Breeden's remains, Dr. Sweet suggested an unprecedented approach, attempting to harvest genetic material from the pulp inside her teeth to generate a DNA profile. In the Forensics Files episode on the case, Dr. Sweet went into detail about the methods used to prove the blood in Cruz's car was in fact Lynn Breeden's. So after being provided with Lynn's bones and teeth as evidence, Dr. Sweet focused mainly on the impacted wisdom teeth still embedded in her upper and lower jawbones. He theorized that these teeth were more protected from the fire's extreme heat by being deeper within the body's core. The extracted tooth pulp and blood samples collected from Chris Cruz's car were sent to the forensics lab. Initially skeptical that any part of a tooth could be viable for DNA testing, Dr. Sweet treated the pulp with a specialized chemical cocktail that allowed the DNA to separate freely into a bundle of complex molecules. Next, the DNA strands were cut into smaller fragments, marked with a radioactive dye and subjected to gel electrophoresis, an electrical field that separates the pieces. The resulting pattern, visualized on X-ray film as an autoradiogram, resembles a barcode unique to each individual. Comparing this DNA fingerprint from the tooth pulp and to the blood evidence found in Cruz's car trunk, jacket, and photo album revealed an undeniable match to Lynn Breeden's profile. As Dr. Sweet stated, quote, "It was very clear the DNA typing profiles matched that of the victim." Armed with this forensic evidence definitively tying Cruz to the crime scene and the victim, prosecutors charged him with Lynn Breeden's murder. Witnesses told police that after Lynn Breeden's boyfriend Chris Paycook left the club following an argument, Lynn began seeking cocaine and crossed paths with Chris Cruz, who it was believed provided drugs to Lynn. There was no evidence confirming that they'd known each other before that night, even though they did run in the same circles for their modeling.
You know, I gotta just jump in here. I actually feel for Chris a little bit.
Well, he was a very viable suspect at one point.
Yeah, and I'm like, oh, I've stormed out of an argument in my day when I was younger. And to get pissy and leave your partner at a club or a bar or whatever.
And then they turn up dead.
They turn up being murdered. That would be a burden to carry. He must have felt so horrible.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Yeah.
There was another woman with their party in the nightclub. That woman said that Chris Cruz and Lynn Breeden went for a pizza at about 5:30 a.m., but she didn't go with them. She said that Lynn seemed very drunk at the time, and no one saw Lynn alive after that. Police surmised that some disagreement, potentially over the drugs Cruz provided, then led to Lynn Breeden's tragic death. Investigators theorized that Lynn Breeden and Chris Cruz drove home that morning and their argument escalated. The disagreement obviously turned violent, and in a rage, Cruz grabbed a tire iron from the trunk and struck Lynn on the head and face, explaining the injuries found on her body.
What kind of animal has an argument with someone, and especially someone who is of no physical threat to him, and then pulls out a tire iron? I was going to say shouldn't hit a woman. You shouldn't hit anybody, right? She was no physical threat to him.
As Lynn Breeden lay near death with a fractured skull, Cruz allegedly grabbed his .22 caliber rifle and shot her 3 times in the head. Police surmised that Cruz then placed Lynn's body into the trunk and drove to a deserted parking lot where he dumped her body inside a garbage bin and emptied the 5-gallon container of gasoline he kept in the trunk. No one reportedly saw the fire as it burned for hours shortly after daybreak on July 6, 1991. According to the fire department, had Cruz used just a bit more gasoline, Lynn's body would have been completely cremated and her identification would have been impossible for science at that time. Less than 2 weeks after the discovery of Lynn Breeden's remains, the Alberni Times reported Cruz's arrest and charges in her murder. The brief article read in part, quote, Christian Albert Cruz, 23, a male stripper who worked as an escort under the name Tony Devons, was arrested in Surrey Tuesday night and charged Wednesday with the second-degree murder of Mary-Lynn Breeden, 30. It's been a long, hard 12 days, said Vancouver police detective Al Catley. Cruz's bail was denied, and he was held in custody to face trial. In November 1993, 2 years after Lynn Breeden's murder, 26-year-old Christian Albert Cruz was found guilty. The prosecutor argued it was a planned and deliberate first-degree murder with Cruz killing Breeden to access her savings account. However, the jury found Cruz guilty of the lesser charge of second-degree murder, meaning the killing lacked an element of planning and deliberation. While the prosecution theorized Cruz beat Lynn unconscious, drove her to the dumpster, shot her, and set her body on fire in a planned attack, Cruz's lawyer argued much of this was speculative since the circumstances of her death were unknown. Yeah, well, one person knows. Anyway, Cruz now faced a mandatory life sentence with at least 10 years of parole ineligibility. Cruz admitted through his lawyer that he had killed Lynn Breeden and burned her body, but did not reveal the exact circumstances surrounding her death.
Well, that's quite a trick, isn't it? The circumstances of her death are unknown because the murderer refuses to say what happened, and therefore he gets a lesser charge.
Right.
And I can't imagine how frustrating that would be for family and friends.
It had to be. It's frustrating to me now, and it's, 30 years later.
And, I get it, right? I get it in terms of if you did something you don't want to get caught, you don't say what happened, right? But doesn't show a lot of remorse.
Nope. According to court documents, when deciding Cruz's 18-year sentence, the trial judge said, "The pre-sentence report and evidence from Cruz's lawyer showed he was 26 years old, in good health, and came from a relatively stable and supportive family background." References about his earlier years spoke positively of Cruz as a caring and considerate young man who seemed destined to become a doctor. However, 2 years before this crime, there was a notable downward spiral into a reckless lifestyle and increased drug use for Mr. Cruz. More recently, there were signs of remorse for the crime and a return to the religious guidance of his youth. The judge sincerely hoped this rehabilitative improvement would continue and considered those factors. Cruz had no criminal record. At the time of this crime, he was employed as a male exotic dancer with a long-term addiction to cocaine and alcohol. To fund these habits, the evidence indicated Cruz was prone to lying, cheating, and stealing even from his friends. Future rehabilitation would require substantial therapy for substance abuse and psychiatric intervention for him. By the method and way he committed this particular murder, Cruz had clearly demonstrated that he presented a high risk of danger to society. But the judge was also mindful that properly assessing Cruz's long-term danger to society was the responsibility of the parole board authorities under the National Parole Act. The aggravating circumstances of this case, however, indicated a sentence beyond the general 10-year period of parole ineligibility. Thus, it was set at 18 years.
You know what gets me, though? This whole, so you found Jesus, but he hasn't told you to tell exactly what happened. Right? And the whole good for you found Jesus that judges do, or any other deity, right? To me, it shouldn't even be mentioned. That should be like a personal thing, whatever. But people seem to kind of use it like it somehow fixes them or shows remorse. But, Jesus wasn't. Did Jesus tell you to actually be 100% forthcoming? If you were actually talking to Jesus, he would have, and you didn't.
Yeah.
Frankly, right?
Yes, exactly.
Because Jesus was a cool dude, and he would have told him to do the right thing. He would have. He would have. 100% he would have.
Yeah. Lynn Breeden's obituary in the Vancouver Sun was short and pointed. Quote, "In memory of Lynn Breeden, December 18, 1960 to July 6, 1991. To the living, I am gone. To the sorrowful, I will never return. To the angry, I was cheated. But to the happy, I am at peace. And to the faithful, I never left. Love, Mom and brothers." End quote. Lynn's father, Captain Ronald Breeden, former RCAF pilot, passed away in August 2018 in Campbell River, BC, at the age of 86. It's unknown what has become of Christian Albert Cruz, but his mandatory minimum sentence expired 15 years ago. He likely walks among us. And that's it for Dark Poutine episode 320, All That Remains, the murder of Mary-Lynn Breeden.
That's right. It's time for voicemails. you can leave us a message at 1-877-327-5786 or 1-877-DARK-PTN. We'd love to hear from you. Let's see who called us this week.
Great. I guess it's time for voicemails. Matthew, are you ready to listen to some listeners?
I am.
Okay, let's listen to our first one.
Hi, this is Marion Kahn again from Jackson Heights, Queens. Yeah, I've called before. I just finished listening to episode 307, 3 on the Track, and you said that the area was, used as for trade traffic, drug traffic, I mean. I wonder if the cops were involved in the drug trafficking. Like, cops would never, ever do such a thing or cover up. I'm not saying they were, but perhaps that's an element or, that was involved, and that's why no answers. Anyway, still love your podcast, and the birds and the cats and the dogs say hello. And I love to see. Bye.
Thank you, Marion.
Thank you, Marion.
I wonder if Marion Kahn is related to Madeline Kahn. The last name is spelled different, but
she's from Jackson Heights.
Yeah, and we'll do an early donut money shout out for her because she sent us some donut money. She says, "Love your show, enjoy the donuts, Cat the dog, and my 7 cats." And Steve, virtual dog bone. And obviously, she has birds, too. She's a very animal-focused person, but I'm good with that. I grew up with a vet as a dad, so.
I like Marianne. She sounds cool.
Yeah, she really does.
Thank you so much, Marianne.
Yeah, much appreciated. What does Marianne do for a living there in where she is?
In Jackson Heights, Queens.
Yeah.
I think she's the queen of queens.
She's the queen of queens.
Yeah, she just walks down the street. She knows everybody. She talks to them, and people just generally come to her for advice.
Yep.
Yeah.
Sounds great.
Yeah.
Let's listen to another. Well, thank you, Marion, so much. Much appreciated. And let's listen to another one.
Hi, Mike and Matthew and Steve, of course. My name's Avery. I'm from Bragg Creek, Alberta, just outside of Calgary. Close to the beautiful Rocky Mountains. Anyway, I've wanted to call many times. I've been a listener for a very long time. But your episode about Bill Miner really instigated me calling because I worked at the keg for 7 years as a server. It got me through my undergrad and master's, and the worst shift of my life was the night we ran out of Billy Miner pie because people absolutely love Billy Miner pie. So, Matt, you're going to need to go try it because it is scrumptious. Anyway, I thank you all for everything that you do. As someone who's had, close contact with, death, homicide, and challenging situations, and working as a therapist and hearing the traumas of people's lives. I just really appreciate the outlook that you bring and the support you have for those left behind, and that the impact is not just on the ones who pass. And keep up all the great work and go take a Duke in your toque. Okay, take care. Bye.
Awesome.
Yeah, I really like Avery as a name.
Yeah, me too.
Do you want to hear something cool?
Sure.
Avery might not even know this. So it's traditionally a guy's name, but it changed over time. Yeah. It's ultimately derived from the Old English name Aelfred, which was Alfred.
Sure.
Which is formed of the elements elf, which is elf, and raid, which is council. So her name stems from a word that literally means elf council.
That's very cool.
Yeah. So she's an elf counselor.
She talked about being a therapist, so she's a therapist to the elves.
a therapist for elves. Did she say, what's the name of the place? Bright Creek?
Bragg Creek.
Oh, Bragg Creek.
Yeah.
Well, why say you're bragging about it? Just call it Bright, because that's the actual brag. It's a Bright Creek.
There you go.
You're like, Matthew, you're going on a tangent.
Yeah, he's lost the plot. Well, thank you so much, Avery. Much appreciated. We've got a few voicemails this week, so let's listen to another.
Are they all nice?
Hey, gentlemen, it's Justin here over at Kamloops. I'm about to play some Grand Theft Equine, and there's a mission in there that reminds me of Billy Miner. I went on a Billy Miner train ride a few years ago, and it was sure as heck fun. I'm wondering if y'all are going to cover the BC Triangle some cowboys are missing. Go poop in your toques, and have a great day. Yeehaw!
Grand Theft Equine. He's playing some Red Dead Redemption, or as I mentioned, my friend's kid calls it Red Dead Horsey.
Red Dead Horsey. People really resonated with that episode, didn't they?
Yeah.
I love it. I love it when people put on voices when they call in as well.
Yeah, but you don't love it when I do, which is weird. I don't understand, Matthew, why you are not into looking into the abyss, because the abyss looks back at you.
That's your one good fake accent.
Well, I can do Hank Hill. I like propane and propane accessories. You know, it's one of those things. There's those two kids whacking off in the tool shed again like a couple of spider monkeys.
Did you just make that line up now?
No. It was from, I think, Beavis and Butthead. But anyway, it's fun. Well, thank you for calling about the Red Dead Redemption. That was really good up there in Kamloops.
The Loops.
I need to go visit Kamloops now. I have so many friends there. I got Jason Hewlett, who I went to shoot documentary with. I have my friend Tim Conrad, who I went to high school with and met him in the airport in Edmonton. And I've got other friends up there too. So I guess it's going to be a trip to Kamloops at some point this summer.
Has Kamloops been getting particularly murdery lately?
It's got some crime going on there, but you know,
because I saw some stuff. You know, I only read my elevator news.
Sure.
And there was like, I think they said Kamloops.
Yeah, I wouldn't doubt it.
You know, when I was a kid and used to listen to CBC radio.
Yep.
I always would like smile because I thought Kamloops was such a funny name for a town.
Yeah.
So I'd always wait for the weather forecast when they said Kamloops. I'm like, yay!
Kamloops.
Not never having been to BC or even knowing what it was.
Yeah. I like Kamloops. Kamloops is a good place.
Good little town.
Alrighty. We have one more voicemail.
I'm Mike and Matthew. It's Chris calling from British Columbia. I've been listening to your podcast for quite a while. I find it very entertaining. Of course, Canadian content is big for me. I've recently retired, and I'd like Matthew to figure out what I retired from. And although I've never had to shit in a hat, I've had to puke in a toque. So keep up the great work. And I normally skip past the ends and beginnings. That's just time-sensitive stuff for me. But I was quite disappointed when I was listening, and you guys don't say that you're Canadian schmucks anymore, which I thought was pretty funny. Anyway, have a great day. Keep up the good work. And you can keep mine for one of those days when you don't have a voicemail, which, again, it sounds sad in your voice when you say, "Oh, there's no voicemail." Cheers.
And we don't say schmucks anymore because a Yiddish friend of mine gave me some feedback about it and said, "You guys aren't schmucks. Schmucks are like not good people." So
we're schmucks.
We're schmoes, maybe. I don't know.
You're a schmuck.
But yeah, so that's why we don't say schmuck anymore.
I do know what Chris retired from.
Okay, what did Chris retire from? I'm very curious about that.
Well, he gave us a little hint when he talked about the importance of CanCon, Canadian content.
Okay, all right.
So Chris was the guy at the CRTC that had the ultimate say in the maple on the back of albums. Remember MAPL?
Yes.
Music, artist, performance, and lyrics. You had to have 3 out of the 4 to be considered Canadian content.
Right, and they were circled.
Yeah. So he was the maple guy.
Oh, so he did the circling.
Yeah, no, he sanctioned if it was truly Canadian content. So for American listeners who don't know this, so back when it was just radio and television, there was a rule of a certain percentage of Canadian content.
60%, yeah.
Because a lot of stuff came from the South. And
it's like trying to tamp down a really loud neighbor.
Yeah,
Mm-hmm.
To play your own music, and but you had to have a maple thing on your album, and you had to have 3 or 4 to get into the Canadian content rotation.
There you go.
This is also why shows like Bowling for Dollars was famous, because they needed Canadian content, so they just videotaped people bowling for money.
Yeah, exactly.
Thank you for calling, Chris.
Thank you for all your voicemails. Much appreciated.
That's it for this week's voicemails. Again, you can leave us one at 1-877-327-5786 or 1-877-DARK-PTN. We'd love to hear from you, even if it is just to say hi and to tell us to go shit in our hats. If you're stumped for what to chat with us about, a quick story is welcome.
Alrighty, let's move on to patrons and Donut Money donors. We do have a patron this week, and that person's name is Mark Simas. And if I'm pronouncing it correct, it's Simas. Could be Simas, but I think it's Simas. Where does Mark live, first of all, Matthew, and what does Mark do?
Mark lives in Kamloops.
Okay, back in Kamloops.
Yeah, he's in Kamloops, and he's a forensic. You know how we're talking about what do you call it, odontist today? What's Doctor
Odontology.
Sweet? Odontology.
Yes.
Mark is a forensic tailor.
Okay.
Yeah.
Forensic tailors. That would have been useful in a bunch of different cases. For example, the Somerton man, because they were trying to figure out where he was from, and the clothing had no labels.
Yeah, so Mark actually is a specialist, and he can like figure out very quickly just from clothes exactly where they were bought and where they're from,
where they were manufactured. That's very cool. That is very, very cool.
Keep up the good work, Mark.
Keep up the good work.
And thank you for your patronage.
Yes, much appreciated.
Patreonage. We appreciate it.
We also have some Donut Money donors. We've already mentioned Marion R. Khan.
Marion Khan, Queen of Queens.
Yes, the Queen of Queens. We also have Hazel Rhodes Claire.
Okay.
And she says, all the pleasure I get from listening to your podcasts. So that's the reason she sent us some donut money. So thank you. Hazel, where does she live and what does she do?
First of all, that's another great name, Hazel.
Hazel is a good name.
Hazel Rhodes is from Rhode Island, and she actually is the founder of the Rhodes Scholarship.
Oh, interesting.
Not Rhodes that sends
even
you
though
to
it's spelled differently.
It's spelled different. It's her own scholarship.
Oh, I gotcha.
Yeah, and it's an art scholarship.
Arts. Yeah, there needs to be more scholarships for the arts. I mean, we've maybe some apprenticeships, scholarships for apprenticeships too. We need people to build things.
Hazel Rhodes is sort of like an artist name as well.
Hazel Rhodes Claire, yes.
You can totally see her being an artist.
100%.
Yeah.
Alrighty. Next we have Cynthia Lee Pawlowski. And she says, I've been listening to and enjoying Dark Poutine for many years now. Thank you for doing all the hard work that goes into the show. Much appreciated. Thank you, Cynthia. Where is she from and what does she do, Matthew? He's just staring at me like blankly.
She's from what do we call it now? Not the Queen Charlotte Islands. The Haida Gwaii.
Haida Gwaii, okay.
Haida Gwaii, and with a last name like Pawlowski.
Yes.
She owns a pet grooming studio.
She owns a pet grooming studio in Haida Gwaii, and does she specialize?
Pawlowski's Paws.
Okay. Does she specialize in any particular animals?
She does. No, she specializes in their nails, and not clipping them, but painting them.
Painted nails.
Yeah, I'm thinking about taking Steve up there, and she's going to put like little diamantes on his nails.
Oh, that's very nice. Steve would then proceed to be done with those things.
Pawlowski's Paws in Haida Gwaii. There you go.
There you folks. Go. Look it up. Anyway,
I forgot the name I forgot the contemporary name for the islands. Excuse me.
Yeah. All righty. Well, thank you so much to all our patrons and Donut Money donors. Appreciate you so much.
We do.
Thanks to all our patrons and Donut Money donors, past and present, for your generosity. It helps to keep the show going. You can become a patron of Dark Poutine at patreon.com/darkpoutine. For a one-time donation, you can send us donut money via PayPal using our email address, darkpoutinepodcast@gmail.com. If you don't already subscribe to the show, it would mean a lot if you did. You can easily find Dark Poutine on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or wherever you listen to your favorite shows. If you haven't gotten yours yet, my book, Murder, Madness, and Mayhem, is available to order via a link on the Dark Poutine website. And speaking of darkpoutine.com, please check it out for show notes and other cool stuff. We'd appreciate it if you took the time to give Dark Poutine a like or a follow on Facebook and Instagram. Most importantly, thank you for listening, and tell your friends about us. Word of mouth is a powerful thing. And that's it for this episode of Dark Poutine. So until next time, don't forget to be a good egg and not a bad apple.
Because there's enough of those already.
There's enough bad apples. We learned about one today.
Signing off from the two schmucks here in British Columbia.
Schmoes, schlubs, nebbishes, you name it.
New on Showcase.
They call me the Christchurch Carver.
Based on the international bestseller.
This trademark souvenir.
Can't stop thinking about the apple. Usually he eats it.
I've got a copycat on my hands.
I know who you are, Joe. I know what you do. You have 2 days to find a copycat.
This is way harder to make sense of when you didn't do it.
Dark City, The Cleaner. All new Wednesdays on Showcase. Stream on Stack TV.